We are live.
It's using the
It's using what?
laptop camera.
It shouldn't be using the laptop camera.
Oh, are they
You
seeing
messed
you?
something up. Hey, everybody. This is John Simon. We have some audio issues, actually video issues this time, thanks to Jeremiah, who pushed the wrong button somehow.
Guys.
Woo! Let's give it up!
Let's see. What does Jeremiah look like? Oh, this is it on your channel.
It's pretty
Our live studio audience here in our very spacious studio.
Alright, this is Colin. I want
Yeah!
How did you...
Woo!
What did you do?
video capture device.
It's the late show.
Did you turn one on?
I didn't touch a thing.
You had to have, because that's not supposed to be the one that's on. It's supposed to be this one, not that one.
Gasp.
Dramatic noises.
We were doing fine earlier. So, while we're doing this, everybody gets to see some really weird things happening, and we have some problems.
I like buttons.
I've noticed, because, you screwed everything up.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're going to try to fix this up, but introduce yourself. This is Sam
Conan.
Conan. I was going to say Conan, but
Nope.
that's just me.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sam Conan. I am a costume designer and cosplayer. And I met these guys at my current job at Joann's Fabrics. But I am a IU student, getting a degree in theater with a minor in costume design. I've designed several different shows. I've won costume contests across the country. And yeah, that is me.
As the camera is continuously adjusted, and we can shake again, would you like to... what projects are you working on now? You said something about an opera when I was talking to you earlier?
Yes, so I am currently working with the Jacob School of Music at the Musical Arts Center, the MAC for short, doing a production of Falstaff. And I'm just a dresser for that, so I wasn't involved in the design, but that's just to get my foot in the door with that particular company and get to know people, and I'm probably going to be later on taking on a more significant role.
Excellent, excellent. You said you're going to school. When's potential graduation?
Great question. It's been a weird journey. First school I went to closed down. Second school I went to got bought out by another school. Third school I went to was University of New Mexico, so... and then I went to... then I was at Jacob School of Music for a little while studying opera, but then there was this little global pandemic you might have heard of.
No, don't start talking
not
about
at all. And during the time off during the pandemic, I did a lot of soul searching, and I realized that singing opera is just not the path that I wanted to take. That I love costumes, I love performing as well, and I'm still working on my voice, but I really want to focus on acting and on costuming.
Right. Got to check something here. You had a look on your face. Do we have audio?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause everything was looking kind of weird there.
All right.
That's my face. Sorry.
I just recently finished a rap production on a show called Puffs that was put on by the University Players, and it is a Harry Potter parody based entirely from the point of view of the Hufflepuffs. And it was a very challenging show because, first of all, we had a budget of nothing. And it was also one of those kinds of shows where you have about 5 actors playing 30 different roles by switching hats. And so there were a lot of costume, individual garments. Each character would be 2 or 3 garments, sometimes just a single wig, sometimes a whole plethora of things, mostly depending upon what we could find and what we had the budget to make. But that that I think was a resounding success. And that went really well. I've also costumed and starred in simultaneously a production of Sweeney Todd. So that was an ordeal. And then I also did the costuming for the MIT Gilbert and Sullivan Society for their production of Pirates of Penzance.
Nice. Tell me a little bit about Sweeney Todd.
So... for those who are watching and are not familiar with Sweeney Todd, Sweeney is the story of the demon barber of Fleet Street. It comes from an old penny dreadful about an evil barber who would slit the throats of his customers, and his downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Lovett, would bake them into meat pies. And so this was adapted by, oh good lord, was it Sondheim? Yes, it was Sondheim. No, it wasn't Sondheim. I don't fucking remember. But
okay.
it was turned into a very successful musical theater show. It had a pretty significant run on Broadway. The touring show is still going on right now. But it's a very challenging show, especially vocally, because a lot of the vocal techniques used are really more on the operatic side, especially for Sweeney and Mrs. Lovett. And so, and of course, it's also very dark, gothic, Victorian clothing. And so luckily that is an area that I specialize in. I grew up, I started my costuming journey when I was a kid, going to Renaissance fairs, loving that, and then I got really into steampunk. And I thought steampunk was just the coolest thing in the world, all throughout high school, but through that I was learning about Victorian clothing and that time period, and slowly I moved away from the more fantastical and into the more historical. And so Sweeney was a real challenge because, again, it was something on an absolute budget of nothing, but it turned out really well. And I actually got to play Sweeney alongside a very dear friend of mine, a guy by the name of Carter Williams, who did drag Mrs. Lovett, and that was so much fun.
When did that actually play?
That was a couple of years ago. I want to say that was in 2017. That was when I was still living in New Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, that was back.
That's one I'd actually like to see live again.
Oh yeah, that was. I think is one of the best roles I've ever played was Sweeney.
Sweet. The Puffs. When would that one?
Puffs just wrapped at the beginning of October.
Okay.
So that was just about a month ago.
Now, I'm involved in the local theater here in Spencer. So is Jeremiah and Sam. Did any of you hear about that one playing at all?
No.
No.
We had very little in terms of a marketing budget, unfortunately. Well, we didn't have a budget essentially. So
Well, next time you have something like that going, contact us. We'll do what we can to help promote it as well.
Well, I mean, it was sold out, so I guess we did okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, it was a small venue, and it was a smaller venue, a little bit more intimate venue. It was a ton of fun to do though.
Nice. We'll have to show you the stage here. We are broadcasting from the Historical Tivoli Theater in Spencer, Indiana, so just have to throw that out there.
Where we have an earthquake?
Yes, another earthquake.
Again,
yeah. Let's just have to go to... There we go.
We'll make a mark board like where we have for everybody's phones that go off during the podcast. We'll have Sam shakes the camera
Yeah.
next to that.
Yeah, I've actually got to make the graphic for that, so what happens is somebody's phone is always not set to be silent.
Yeah.
And I think the guests are at 9. You're at 4. 2. I'm at like 3. Yeah.
I think I'm at 2.
Am I the 4 and you're the 2?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, are we tied?
Because I usually...
You're a 6 if I'm drunk enough.
You've had a couple that were... Well, you had to keep looking at it because you're getting buzzed too.
They get buzzed, but
Yeah.
it's always been on.
Well,
I left it on.
when you're on the phone, you hear this coming through the microphone
Yeah.
because that shouldn't happen this time though because it's disconnected.
Right.
Yeah.
Now the camera will shake because my phone's on the stand.
Excellent. So now we'll know. But again, this is usually for podcasts. We just do the initial stream on Twitch. It also gets put on YouTube.
Yeah, okay.
But immediately, sometime tomorrow, it'll be on Anchor, Spotify, things like
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Like I've got 6 stations it goes through.
Nice.
So, what's on the horizon?
So, like I said, I'm working on Falstaff right now, and that is gearing up to be a ton of fun. The folks at Jacobs has a budget, so their costumes are always just supreme. I've worked with them in the past as a supernumerary in Parsifal, which that is pretty much the only Wagnerian opera that actually gets done anymore, because the ring cycle is too long and everything else is really racist. I mean, Parsifal has its cultural ambiguities, let's say, but it's not as blatant, and it can be sort of shoved to the side. But I was a supernumerary in that, which is essentially it means a crew member that is in costume and doing crew things on stage. So, like, for example, they needed a big vestment brought out and held there for the king to put on, and so that was my job. But that was, the costumes are just absolutely phenomenal, and they've got a wonderful team working there, and I'm really excited to get more involved with that.
Excellent.
And in terms of a personal project, I'm actually having a bit of an existential crisis right now, because I just finished the big project I've been working on for the last year and a half. And so now I'm sort of standing here like, It's done. What am I doing with my life? What do I do now? Where do I go? Who am I?
Don't let anybody know you've got free time.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, I just finished that Captain Hook that you've seen and we've talked about. But that was a huge build.
If anybody wants to see it, it's Samwise underscore cosplay.
Yeah, Samwise underscore cosplay on Instagram. That's my main thing.
Yep.
I'm actually going to get some proper photo shoots done fairly soon, so I'm excited for that.
Yep.
Because so far everything I have is just I'm going to put my phone on the mantle and put a timer.
Yeah, that's actually how I knew about that and saw that coming up. And
Yeah.
you mentioning not having a hook.
I thought that's how you did things professionally. Jeez, just camera, hope. Let's go.
Well, that's how the celebrities get away with it, right? It's not like they have an entourage holding the camera for them.
No, nothing
Never.
like that. Not
No.
trained professionals are involved.
No. Budgets. Pfft,
Yeah.
Who needs them?
we do.
Yeah. Please sponsor us.
Yes. We actually had somebody on one show with Anton Neff. Anton Neff's a local politician.
Yeah.
And we had somebody on there who's like, oh, I'll donate to the channel if you hug. So we hugged. And, oh, that wasn't a very good hug, but I'll donate anyway. You didn't donate.
Shame.
That's right. I mean, $1 would have been great. My luck would have been like, here's your penny. Maybe. So you mentioned a Renaissance fair in your youth. Which Renaissance fairs did you go to?
I'm from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and we've got I'd say a fairly small one out there. It takes place at a living history museum called Las Golondrinas. That's set in the Spanish colonial period. But they they set up SCA people go in and set up tents, and they did jousting sometimes, Highland Games style stuff. And so that was really, I was probably, 6 to 8 years old, and I saw, ooh, people are in costumes outside of Halloween. This is so cool. And I was, my early attempts at that were very, they were childish. I was a kid. But it was really I just locked onto this idea of, ooh, you can wear cool stuff all year round at different times of year. And from there, I went into doing a lot of cosplay. I worked at the local Comic Cons, or volunteered with a group called the Cosplay Rest and Repair Room, which sort of functioned as a backstage space for cosplayers. So we had a room where you could, take off a wig, take off a prosthetic. We had water, we had snacks, we had electrolytes. And we had, hot glue guns, sewing, sewing stuff, and so we really, for a place to rest and repair, and so that was a huge part of my costuming experience, was helping with, costume emergencies, and it really gave me an interesting insight into the weird ways in which people who weren't trained would just come up with ways to put a garment together, ways that are inherently nonsense, but it not having that formal training, you come up with all sorts of great ideas. And so I very specifically remember there was a lady who was just sewn into her dress, and the only way
I watched that happen. Yeah.
Well, and the only way that it would fit is if she was just sewn into it. She could not figure out the closures. And one of my mentors, the lady who runs the room, a lovely woman by the name of Doreen Gunkel, sat there, and she was originally an SCA person, and she was saying, oh yeah, historically this used to be a thing where you just get sewn into a dress, and that, you would be sewn into it every day, and that was just part of how it was put together. But, stuff like that. But the other thing about it is you would see this wonderful crossover of costuming and prop building and technology. There was one of our regular people, this guy named Matt, who he 3D printed a full-size Dalek that he goes around in. Dalek's named Ned.
How long did that take to print?
A while, and there have been multiple iterations of Ned. He's built off of a mobility scooter, but Matt is a weird genius. He is that guy. I think the best story to give an idea of who Matt is, he went to bowling with some of the guys, and he was literally there measuring the bowling ball and weighing wads of duct tape to cram into the holes in order to perfect his shot. He was sitting there with a chemistry scale and doing the math, and he is that kind of guy.
Did it work?
I don't know. I wasn't there, but I assume so because his bowling scores are perfect.
That's a story I'm going to need to answer to someday, honestly.
Yeah, I will text them at some point and say, did this work? But
Add 20 easy points to your bowling score. Pros don't want you to know this.
Pros don't want you to know this.
I can use another 20 points.
Get a 6-year degree in engineering or whatever the hell he has. I don't even know. But he is part of another one of my absolute my big cosplaying community, which is called the Royal Manticoran Navy. And the RMN is a fan group based on the nerdiest sci-fi series I've ever read that nobody's heard of, called the Honorverse, David Weber's Honorverse series. And so we are...
I've heard of it.
You've heard of it?
Okay. Not read anything.
That is more than most people. Nobody's ever heard of this, and it's a real tragedy. I've met David Weber, the author, a couple of times. Really remarkable guy. I'm trying to schmooze it enough that when they do make a movie, he'll cast me as somebody. Excuse me. Through that, there's a lot of historical aspects to the books. It's basically take the Napoleonic Wars, Horatio Hornblower, that sort of naval combat, and put it 2,000 years in the future in space. And so but the costumes are really very historically inspired. And so within that community, again, you get this this transition from the fantastical into the historical. And that is something I've carried with me in a lot of my costumes. I love taking a fantastical design and recreating it in a way that is a little bit more historical, a little bit more accurate, a little bit more wearable as well. I was mentioning earlier, I've got a couple of tenets of costuming.
Yeah.
And the first one, above and beyond everything else, for the character, this is not a costume. This is their clothing. And so if you want to make a really remarkable, a good costume, it should not look like a costume. If it looks like a costume, unless, the specific situation around it calls for it, like this is a costume for a masquerade ball or something like that, that the character is going to, this shouldn't look like a costume. This should be lived in. This should be, properly worn and weathered and have fabrics that are going to be, appropriate to something that somebody might use, or at least potentially use. And that sort of goes into my next big thing about costuming, which is the shoes. You will absolutely make or break an outfit with the shoes. I have seen some absolutely remarkable cosplays ruined by cheapo shoes or comfy shoes. And not that I'm saying your shoes can't be comfortable, but the shoes will just absolutely... It's one of those little things that you don't realize you notice, but you notice it. You absolutely do.
What do you recommend for acquiring or making proper shoes?
The best thing to do, honestly, is to get yourself a couple of basic shoes that are usable for a lot of costumes. So, black dress shoes. That is going to serve you so well. That can be adapted into a million different things, like a basic pair of black dress shoes. You can put a tab with some elastic around the bottom and a buckle on that, and you've got colonial era shoes. So black dress shoes are going to be a really solid one. The other big thing is going to be a decent pair of work boots. Something pretty generic, no buckles or straps or anything, just generic pair of boots, black or brown, I would usually say, rounded toe, you don't want anything too pronounced, and then you can use various boot covers to dress that up in whatever way you want to. And honestly, this is starting to be seen more in a lot of screen stuff, too. Like, I was watching a thing about Bo-Katan's costume in The Mandalorian, and, at first it looks like, oh, these are, knee-high boots being worn underneath her shin guards, but when you look closer, no, they actually used what looked like just plain old work boots with a cover over them, and it looks great. It's absolutely usable.
Okay, we're going to have to bring you back after you've seen Dune, so we can talk about...
I'm excited to. Because
there's a couple things there, costume-wise, specifically shoes, that I would like your Yeah.
Well, one
Wait,
thing
watch the movie first.
One
yeah.
thing I've seen, I've just seen the promotional stuff for Dune, and one thing that I'm really liking about it is that they, again, sort of lean into the historical aspect. I've seen some sort of uniform that looks very similar to, it's got the Mandarin collar on it, and it's got the single-breasted piping, and that looks very similar to something just pre-World War One. Something that you would probably see in Germany or Austro-Hungary.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, I love Star Trek, but I gotta say, Star Wars costumes have withstood the test of time much better, and that's because they went for a historical costume designer. They got somebody who worked on historical dramas, not a sci-fi costume designer. And that way you get these Imperial uniforms that look like a real military uniform and look like it could be something pulled from the pages of history or the future. And I think that's something that a lot of sci-fi, especially like early sci-fi, 70s, 80s sci-fi in particular, did very poorly, is they completely divorced themselves from where these costumes came from.
So we're not going to a future where everything's chrome.
Oh, hell no. Every garment that we are wearing today has a history behind it. Let's take the t-shirt, for example. T-shirts they were invented for bachelors who didn't know how to sew back on their own buttons. And they were used as undergarments for the most part, but during World War II, sailors popularized them, sailors and soldiers, but sailors in particular, popularized them as just normal wear because you're on a Liberty ship. You don't give a shit if you're running around in your underwear. And so they would go onto shore on shore leave, and they would just be in these t-shirts, and it was seen as, oh, that's what the soldiers are wearing. That's what everybody, all of the men were wearing, and that became, a popular, acceptable overgarment. Just something that you could wear around in public. And you can do that with any garment. Any garment, there is a history, there is a lineage, there is a history behind it. And so you need to do that with sci-fi. You need to find, where did this garment come from? What modern clothing that we are wearing right now evolved into whatever this is? Which I think that is a big thing of, like, you look at Buck Rogers, and, where did these outlandish, weird collars and, God knows what else, I'm thinking of, the Jetsons. They just had these big discs on their arm for no reason, or, stuff like that. You got to either give a function to it. Why are they wearing this? Is there a reason for this? And you got to give a lineage. You got to think about, where did this come from? How did this come about? How might this have evolved to be more comfortable, to be more usable, to be more fashionable? There's history of costumes is all about evolution.
Well, you were talking about Flash Gordon. I'm assuming you're talking the 90, 80, 81 movie.
I was talking about the old Flash
Okay, the
Gordon.
old serials.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not incredibly familiar with them, but, that really, really old. And admittedly, there was, it was the very dawn of sci-fi. Obviously, they were trying things out. Not everything is going to work, and a lot of things did. A lot of things stuck around, but, those old costumes are very cheesy. And they don't hold up very well. And I
Half
think
the time they were just a jumpsuit with a couple extra things attached to it.
And don't get me wrong, part of that was the fact that they had a budget of nothing. They had no budget. But going back to Star Wars and why I idolize the costumes from that, they also had a very limited budget. But instead of going with the jumpsuit and some stuff, they instead, Lucas dug into historical costumes. And, like most of the Star Wars blasters were World War II, lesser known World War II guns that, he could get for cheap from these prop rental places. And, I'm going to take a C-96 Mauser, put a silencer and a scope on it for no discernible reason, and that's Han Solo's blaster.
Yeah.
But, again, you can go back to costumes with that of where does it come from?
Nice. Any particular bit of costuming / clothing that you were particularly fond of?
Actually, I wore it in today. I call that my bear pelt. It started life as an NCR Ranger cosplay, and it... My hat! It started life as an NCR Ranger cosplay, and this is the iconic duster, the iconic overcoat. You've got the NCR bear there. Oh, just hang the hat back up. That's not part of it. But over time, I got this on Etsy, and I found that the capette was very restrictive of movement, so I added in these leather panels here, because obviously I couldn't get the same material, so I ended up adding in something contrasting, something a little different. And those panels gave me much greater range of movement. And then as time went on, I realized this is just a comfortable jacket. So what I ended up doing was I work at Joann's Fabrics, so I get an employee discount. So I bought just a ton of faux fur. And you can see this is an entirely removable lining.
Oh, nice.
You know, there are zippers along the sides. There are snaps up at the top.
I want one now.
And so this is just, and you know, it's this huge, wonderfully cozy coat that... you know, it is completely usable, and it's still usable as a rain jacket during the summer, because it still just is a duster.
I need to show Gavin that. I'll need to take pictures at the end of this.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But, you know, the bear pelt, I use that for riding the motorcycle in winter.
If he would tune into the podcast, he would see it now.
Come on, Gavin.
He's in bed.
But, yeah, it's really cozy, and I love that because it's something that I use every day, but it's still very much a costume piece.
Speaking of, is Ford on?
No one has responded anywhere.
No, yeah.
Nope,
A friend of mine, Ford, he's in Arkansas. He's a big reenactor. He should be watching this because costuming and all that other stuff is 100% up his alley. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will say I often have a bone to pick with reenactors, simply because they will very often take the fun out of it. Oh, it has to be accurate. It has to be accurate. And being 100% accurate, that might be fun for you. That you might really enjoy getting into the minute details of, you know, what kind of buttons and how is the button stamped or whatever it is. Some people don't give a shit. And, you know, there are people out there who will be like, oh, your costume isn't accurate. Like, don't comment on somebody's costume if they are not asking for critique.
Yeah.
And you know, sure, you've got your time period, but let other people just have fun.
Yeah, I like costumes. I like it if it's accurate. I like if it's something you did on your own. I also go by the 10-foot rule. If it looks good from 10 feet, you did a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't care if you hand-stitched it. I don't care if you used a machine. If it looks good.
Yeah, I don't care if you bought it from Party City. If it looks good, great.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of gets into another thing that I love telling people, especially, you know, working at Joann's, I get a lot of first-time sewers, you know, people coming in, no idea what they're doing, looking for advice, you know, middle schoolers coming in, oh, I want to do this cosplay, you probably don't know what cosplay is, like, ooh, yes, I do. You have come to the right person. And the biggest piece of advice that I always give them is let yourself fail. Your first project is going to look like garbage. Wear it, be proud of it, you put your heart and soul into it, and then make another one. And that one's going to look like shit too. And then the next one's going to look a little bit less like shit, and so on and so forth. And if you expect yourself to be perfect on the first try, and, you know, this is general advice for life, but...
Barbin, are you listening? I'm sorry.
But if you expect yourself to be perfect on the first try, you're never going to get any better.
Yeah.
And I've been running into that with my own, you know, I'm sort of trying to take my own advice when it comes to foam crafting, you know, with for doing armor. Because I've been very intimidated by it, and I'm like, oh no, you know, I see these amazing things made by, like, Kamui Cosplay, and I'm like, oh, I could never do anything like that. I'm like, I need to let myself fail. I need to be like, yes, my first attempt at an NCR breastplate is going to look terrible. But my second attempt will look less terrible, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
I have an analogy I tell people at work is they say, I don't have time to cook, or I'm not a very good cook. I say, okay, go buy 2 dozen eggs. Turn your skillet up on high as it goes. Toss an egg in there. See what happens to the egg. Wait 1 minute. Wait 2 minutes. Wait 3 minutes. See what happens to the egg. Then throw it in the trash.
Then turn the fire alarm off.
And then turn your skillet on low. and wait 1 minute, wait 2 minutes, wait 3 minutes, see what happens to the egg.
Yeah, absolutely.
Throw it away.
Absolutely, yeah.
And just, you have to fail. And see what
But
happens.
you don't necessarily have to throw it away. I mean, I've seen what you eat.
Well, I would eat it. I ain't picky, but yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Yeah, you have to let yourself fail, and you have to let yourself experiment.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only way I've gotten anywhere, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Except for that one time I was perfect at that thing. Oh wait.
Allow me to allow myself to fail. I'm going to play.
Well, that's I'm very active on TikTok because I'm gay. Of course I am. I'm a gay costumer. Of course I am. But I was going somewhere with this. Yes. There's my particular side of TikTok talks about the gifted kid burnouts, and I'm very much one of those. Where, everything came easy to you up until a certain point where you realize you didn't learn how to work hard, and suddenly, if it doesn't come easy, you just don't do it. And that is a lesson that I'm trying to learn for myself, and I'm trying to get better at. That, you were perfect at everything on the first try, and suddenly, oh no, I'm not perfect anymore. I'm just must be bad at this. I should never do it. Bullshit. Let yourself be bad at things.
Yeah, that is 100% my son Corbin. He's smart, intelligent, but he had that point where if he doesn't, get it on the first try, he's no good. It's like, no, you need to stop that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's slowly getting over that hump. Work harder.
Yeah. Not even necessarily work harder. Fail more often.
I'm not sure if that's probably the same sentence, honestly. If you break it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
It
still.
gets to the same goal.
Yeah.
I'd say it's a different path to the same goal.
Yeah. I think it's a different path, but yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. In terms of costuming stuff, I'm taking this wonderful costume history class this semester, and one thing I've found fascinating, and I need to have a conversation with my teacher about this, but that I've just been wanting to voice my thoughts on this, is actually the logical progression of clothing and where we are going in terms of prudeness, in terms of how much clothing we wear, what is acceptable to wear, how much to cover, how little to cover. I was struck by the example of the doublet, which is it started out as the medieval gambeson, which was the padding worn underneath a knight's armor, and that was considered underwear. And then, as time went on, they would be like, "Screw this! I'm just wearing my gambeson." And at first, that was scandalous, but then over time, it was like, okay, this becomes more and more acceptable. And then it transforms into the doublet, which is basically a stylized gambeson. Very often, you had the same padding. You had it tied together at at the arm. The arms were tied on, much like a gambeson would be. And it became stylized. But what was once considered underwear became acceptable. And again, with t-shirts, like we were talking about earlier, what was once considered underwear is now everyday normal clothing. And it sort of makes me wonder. I see some of these girls, going out to bars on Saturday evenings wearing essentially leggings and a bra. And I'm like, 50 years ago, that would have been public indecency. That would have been completely not allowed. And now it's just kind of, yeah, that's okay. They're wearing what they're wearing. And with the free the nipple movement and all of that, which is not accepted, but it's starting to gain some traction. It does make me wonder if, sci-fi movies wouldn't be more accurate just having everybody wearing a thong.
Possibly.
Because, what was once taboo, we seem to be trending in that direction, and the last time historically that we really, really reversed course on that was the Middle Ages, and that was largely because we were in a mini ice age. And I say we, that was European fashion, Western European fashion. But that was really, you were in a miniature ice age, and suddenly layers upon layers upon layers of clothing were very necessary. And, of course, the more layers you could wear, the richer you were, and the nicer furs and all of that. It was a show of wealth.
Yeah.
But we have been slowly
whittling it away.
Yeah, whittling away at how much clothing is necessary.
I'm going to take a small tangent here. I want you to look up the Indiana law on topless women. I believe we're
one of the few states that it's not allowed at all.
not allowed at all.
Not allowed at all. No.
Double check that.
It doesn't. It wouldn't surprise me, but
because there are a few states where there's no law against it, but
yeah,
society tends to bring that up.
Yeah, and it's usually frowned upon.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does make me wonder. And of course, another thing
Indiana says the mere showing of the female breast in public is illegal according to state law.
There we go.
Never mind breastfeeding, but
right.
It's almost like they're there for a purpose.
Go figure, right?
Oh my god.
Another tangent I'm going to take. There was the transition of sleeves being something that needed to be attached separately.
Yeah.
Not sewn, but laced on or something.
Yeah.
When did we actually, as a species, figure out how to sew them properly and actually have proper sleeves?
Okay. Are we talking men's or women's garments first?
Let's go with men's garments first.
Men's garments. Let's start way the hell back. There are a couple of basic shapes for a garment. And pretty much every garment can be broken down into a series of tubes. Pants are 2 basic tubes. A shirt is 3 basic tubes. And people were sewing different tubes together ancient times. That having attached sleeves was not, some revolutionary new thing. And indeed, the undershirts that were worn underneath were, sleeve was attached. That was one garment. But like I was saying, with the development from gambeson to doublet to what is now a modern suit, you did have that time where, it was fashionable to have the sleeve laced on or with decorative ribbons, and those get very large and elaborate and develop over time. That was more of a fashion thing. And that really started to fall out as you get out of the medieval period into Renaissance. It was still there, but as you get past Renaissance and you start getting into what we would recognize today as a suit, getting into Regency, Napoleonic era, tailcoats, stuff like that, it really was it fell out of fashion. So it was
Let's hope it doesn't come back.
Well, I was actually having a thought. No, I was having a thought the other day because I was looking at who was it? He was being interviewed, a black gay actor being interviewed by Stephen Colbert, and he was wearing this fabulous suit jacket with these big, huge.
Lil Nas?
No, not Lil Nas. I want to say it started with a B, but anyway. With these fabulous big 70s shoulder pads, which I don't think are the look for everybody. But he had these sleeves that were significantly longer on the top and slit on the bottom, and reminded me a little bit of the way that you would have sleeves on a... I've just lost the term, but another medieval men's garment. And it made me think, that might be an interesting direction to go, and see how could you combine a modern suit with a modern collar, lapels, the way that this is, let's say this vest, and detached, laced-on sleeves. That might be an interesting experiment to play around with.
Do you think it'd be something that could be done not just for the fashion industry show, but an actual practical...
It could be. It could be. One thing that is often misunderstood about fashion as an industry is you will see, people going online ranting about, the stuff that people are wearing at Paris Fashion Week, like, they expect us all to wear that. No, of course they don't. That is high fashion. That is runway fashion. It is a piece of art on a person. It is not intended to be practical. It is not intended to be everyday. It is intended to be interesting and innovative and pushing boundaries and stuff like that. Sometimes some of those concepts do find their way into everyday wear. Like, for example, there was a trend in the early 2000s of very large garments. And that is starting to be somewhat popularized. And so I don't think it's a very good look, personally. I don't think it's a very flattering silhouette on anyone. At worst, it looks like you're trying to hide the fact that you're overweight, and at best, it looks like you're wearing your dad's clothes.
So my high school years.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
But it is, for better or worse, finding its way into street fashion. And I think, hopefully, that is going to find its way out of street fashion. But
It will. Everything does.
most likely, yeah. Well, but that actually brings up another interesting little thing, that... And I think this could lead into a much broader societal conversation. But fashion has tended to change at about the same pace that our means of communication have. So you go back to ancient Mesopotamia, where you are writing on clay tablets, or papyri, and fashion is changing in the spans of thousands of years. You can go 1,000 years and have generally the same outfits. And then you get, later on, and you get into, making of paper. And you get into, the medieval era with the illuminated manuscripts, and literacy is starting to become a little bit more common, at least amongst the nobility and, the educated classes. Fashion starts changing every 300 years or so. And then you get into... And then as it goes on, you get to, okay, fashion changes about every 100 years. And then you get, suddenly you're in, the 1700s, and, decade by decade, it's very noticeable. You're starting to have, you can tell about what decade this is coming from. And then, of course, last century, an outfit from, 1930 is going to look drastically different from 1960. And now we're even getting into the point where every 5 years, every year, every season. And I think that is directly tied to, okay, so ancient world had, hand messages, and then you get into Gutenberg invents the printing press. And information is moving faster. And, wooden block printing of images in particular. And then you get into photography, which is a huge leap forward. And now you have newspapers and photographs in newspapers, and then color photographs in newspapers, and then the TV and the internet. And as communication in general speeds up, the changes in fashion do as well.
So how much faster do you think it'll get?
I am terrified to find out. I am genuinely frightened to find out.
Well, for at least the last 50 years, there's been the joke of, as soon as you wear it, throw it away. We're almost to that point where some people feel the fashion is
We're getting there again, and I say again because that was the case for the very, very upper class in, say, Victorian society. You could never wear this, a proper lady could never wear the same dress twice. That would be completely ludicrous, but that's got more to do with conspicuous consumption.
Yeah. Of
showing I can afford to, blow a small country's budget on my weekend attire. You think I'm kidding?
I know.
Yeah, no, quite literally.
My dress only fills half the hallway. Throw it out.
Oh, my dress only takes up 5 farms worth of cotton.
Yeah.
What do you mean the lace is only 24 karat?
Yeah, well, that's actually part of why you would get these enormous garments with a ridiculous amount of fabric in it. Was how much fabric can you afford to waste?
Oh, like where they rustle around.
Yeah,
inside
ruffles
and,
and
like,
pleating.
fill it out.
Yeah, exactly. How much fabric can you afford to absolutely just completely waste? And one thing that really fascinatingly actually cut down on that, of course, fashions changed and women were just not having it anymore in some ways. But also the World Wars helped to slim down figures enormously, especially in women's clothing, because suddenly it was your patriotic duty to use as little fabric as possible. And so, of course, designers took this as we can bring in the figure, we can have different kinds of styles, and they would take these outer cultural mandates and make them use these rules to create art and to create. You can always tell a lot about a society by what kind of stuff they were wearing.
Okay.
You can tell a lot about you look at ancient Mesopotamia. What kind of fabric were they wearing? What kind of farming were they doing? What kind of techniques did they have to make fabrics? Or World War II, what are the outer constraints? What are societal norms? What is acceptable to show and what isn't? Again, going back to, are breasts acceptable? Clothing tells a story. Everybody's clothes tells a story. You can tell a lot about a person by what they are wearing, what condition what they are wearing is in, how it is worn. All of these things tell stories. And that goes back to what I like to really get into the nitty-gritty in my cosplays. So when I was aging up this duster, and a lot of the aging has worn off, but I was getting really into the nitty-gritty of, okay, so this guy is NCR, he's in the Mojave. What color of soil is in the Mojave? What color would the dirt be that was ground into his clothing? How is he spending his days? What parts might get burnt most often? For example, you'll notice right here, I have intentionally burnt and singed around here because let's say that this guy smokes. His cigarette is going to be, might
right
be
there.
Yeah, his cigarette is going to be right there. He's going to be getting some burns in there. Is he dealing with laser rifles? Is this going to be, how is this whole created? And I find that stuff just infinitely fascinating.
It's all in the details.
Absolutely, it is, yeah. And again, I don't want to shame anybody who doesn't want to put that much time and thought and research and effort into a cosplay. Cosplay is fun. It is supposed to be fun. If you are having fun wearing your Attack on Titan onesie and getting shit-faced in the hotel lobby at a convention, have fun. Tell me where the party is. But for me, this is fun. Getting into all of that minute detail that nobody is going to notice except me. That's fun. I think that's a ton of fun.
Brings it back, makes it a little more realistic,
Yeah.
believable, fun. Yeah, well, I LARP, so does Jeremiah. Some of the costumes I've made have been strictly functional.
Yeah, of course.
Simple tabard, simple pants,
Yeah,
because I'm going to be rolling around and getting hit, and we're going to tear this stuff up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this kind of comes back to the sleeves. We were representing a Ren Fair in Las Cruces, and Las Cruces' Ren Fair was not very Renaissance-y. But that they had us dress up, and everybody was trying to do the sleeves that were
Renaissance
laced on.
and Renaissance Fair are two completely different styles.
Yeah, but this wasn't even either. No offense, Las Cruces, no total offense, but
It's Las Cruces, so you can make fun of them.
Yeah.
What are they going to do?
I hated that sleeve it never fit, no matter how much we altered it, no matter how much we fixed it, no matter how many times we tied it back on. It was a crap design. I'm like, how did people live with this? But then again, I also know other people have suffered for fashion throughout the eons as well. But
Yeah, that's another thing. You will look at, say, the sleeves, or women. Let's go back to women's clothing and corsets in particular. What was a woman going to be doing with her day? If she is going to be sitting around, sipping tea, listening to recitals, and trying very hard not to pass out, she's going to be wearing garments where she doesn't need to be able to extend her arm. Her arm is going to stay like this the whole time. And men's clothing did much the same thing. If you were not going to be out in the fields working, you didn't have to have a garment that was easy to move around in or comfortable to move around in. You might have garments that helped to train you into the proper posture. And so that might be some of what you were running into. Was that difficulty of, you're trying to do things that somebody of the nobility, because that was very much a nobility, that was a noble fashion. That was not something that the peasants were wearing. And there really wasn't a bourgeoisie at that time. It hadn't, the merchant class had really just begun to take form. The nobles, the only really strenuous activities that they were going to be involved in wearing that sort of court garb was dancing and potentially fencing.
okay,
So if you're running around, a Ren Fair, doing whatever you might be doing, you are probably wanting to have a bit more mobility than what is actually expected from that garment.
well, it was terrible. I hated it. Matter of fact, the person I was with was even wearing the quarter-inch board was actually sewn into the chest plate to squeeze everything else up.
Yep.
And she couldn't bend over for anything.
No, why would she need to? She was a proper lady. She had servants to pick things up
I
for
wouldn't
her.
say she was a proper lady.
Well, the costume was a
yes,
proper...
the costume was
of a proper lady. She would have servants to pick things up for her. Why would she need to?
Yeah.
Why would she need to be able to put it on herself? She has servants to put it on for her.
She did like to say how, this would generally stop assassinations. I was like, well, let's try that.
No.
Did I say that online? Oh, yes, I did. Oh, well, too late.
If there is one thing that people have infinite creativity on, it is how to kill each other.
Yeah, but if it's just covering this area, there's this whole back. It's great,
Yeah.
Sides, softer, head. There's no...
Back area.
Yeah.
No.
The soft points.
And besides, the boobs were pushed up. You could see where the soft tissue was. Sure, you might have to go through some bone.
And also, ultimately, it was a piece of wood. You can get a knife through that.
May take a little work, but we'll do it. Quarter inch. That was a little excessive. It
You
didn't
can
need
get
to
a
be that
sword.
big.
If you can get if a longbow can pierce armor, it can pierce a quarter-inch board.
Well, that's where you get into what type of bow was it? What was the edge? How was the armor made?
And
I
there
mean,
I am out of my element.
and then you start getting into why don't we wear that sort of armor anymore? It's because, well, the projectiles exceeded the actual practicality.
And we do still wear some kind of armor. There is still basically plate armor put inside of some soldiers' gear.
They had to reinvent it.
Yeah,
You
pretty much.
started coming up with your ceramic Kevlar steel plates and
Carbon fiber.
Yeah, can you imagine? Can you imagine telling a man at arms or a knight in the medieval period, going back and telling them, "Hey, yeah, we still wear armor, but it's made of ceramic now," and they would look at you like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
Talk to a guard along the Nile in Egypt. So we still wear like flowing robes and things, but now we got these cool like sewn in plates. We model after spider webbing. It's incredible, like the stuff that works. What?
Yeah.
Huh?
blasphemy.
Not even blasphemy. They would look at you like, "What is?" I don't even.
Well, they would either think
insane.
Yeah, you
they
just
would either think
even,
you're insane. Some
let's
sort of
get over the
magic
language
user,
barrier.
or-
Yeah, let's get over the language barrier and the cultural barrier. They would just look at you like, "Okay, you're just."
Yeah, sure, whatever.
There are things wrong with your brain.
We were all dropped as children, admit it.
I fell onto a concrete floor at Home Depot.
Sweet.
I have a very specific memory of falling. I was playing around in the cart in the basket, like my mom was telling me not to, and I have a very specific memory of the floor coming towards me.
I fell into a swimming pool when I was a kid. The deep end, the 15-foot deep end, my grandfather had an in-ground swimming pool. My dad jumped in to save me. My dad could barely swim himself. So the story goes, he took me and threw me to my mom so he could swim out of the pool. She mostly caught me.
I took a header out of a tree in the front yard when I was 7 or 8, and I saw stars for a moment, and everything spun, and everything was okay. I stood up, so...
Where can I start? Let's see. A friend of the family had their youngest kid came up to me and hit me in the head with a brick.
Nice.
My sister remembers my eyes kind of glazing over as I fell over. I don't remember that at all. My sister my sister got a brand new bed, so we were jumping up and down, and all they know is they saw me screaming by. Whoa! Turns out I decided to lay back and went straight into the headboard and busted the back of my head open. I got like stitches 4 or 5 times in the head for stupid reasons. Not to mention when I was older, there was a skateboard decided to stop while going downhill. What happens when the skateboard stops?
You keep going.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, road rash.
In motion, stay in motion.
Sure did.
Thanks, Newton.
All I can remember is my friend's mom complaining about me bleeding all over her couch. All right, well that was a nice little tangent.
Yay, violence.
What other projects are you got coming up in the future? You said you just kind of finished one.
Yeah, I just finished Captain Hook, which was a massive build that I. Oh God!
Well, were you more influenced by the Dustin Hoffman hook or the traditional Disney hook?
I very much took my own design on it, and what I wanted to do was sort of meld Captain Hook, Peter Pan, and Pirates of the Caribbean a little bit. And so what I did is I took the color schemes and some of the iconic images like, the big feather, stuff like that, and put them within that time period of specifically the 1750s is where I decided to plant my hook. And this is very different from the hook in, Robin Williams' Hook, because his was very clearly set at the very beginning of the golden age of piracy. We're talking, 1670s, even 1650s even. And one really interesting way that you can tell where in that spectrum you fall is actually the vest. Vests have gotten and continue to get shorter over the centuries. So vests started out down below the knees.
Which is where they should be. Sorry, that's just that's
on that.
That's just the LARPer in me coming in. I prefer that sort of medieval old look, but that's a different story.
So vests were actually adopted by one of the Louis, one of the King Louis of France, and he was very impressed by the Ottoman soldiers that he hired for one of his wars, and they wore a style called the vest. And he said, "Oh, I love that idea." And of course, it looked nothing like what they ended up coming up with. But it was a long sleeveless garment, very similar to a tabard. And as time progressed, they got shorter and shorter and shorter. And and now remind me, who was the actor in the Robin Williams movie? That was
Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, that was Dustin Hoffman. His vest was very heavily brocade, lots of layers of embroidery. Because you've got the basic trim, and then you've got inner layers of embroidery and more trim till almost the entire garment is covered in it. But it was down around his knees, and you can tell. You could tell, and it was very squared off. That was very beginning of the golden age of piracy. You could also just generally tell things looked fancier. There was a lot more embellishment on it. There was a lot more fabric being used. There was a lot more gold, and again, a lot more trim, a lot more embroidery. And styles did get more conservative. But the vest came up and up and up and up, and the hook that I did had a vest that it's still fairly low by modern standards, about mid-thigh. Upper to mid-thigh. But it's starting to get more of an actual shape to it. It's not just squared off. You've got this pointed shape that forms sort of a W. And that is a great way to tell when something is in that spectrum in men's garments, because men's garments didn't change nearly as much as women's garments did. And they don't tend to change nearly as quickly as women's garments do. But yeah, is the length of the vest. And so I set it in the 1750s, right at the end of the golden age of piracy, East India Company, that kind of era. And so you've got this sort of military-style frock coat, because they're still doing the frocks. It's just, it has become more conservative. You've got a shit ton of buttons, but fewer buttons. God, so many fucking buttons. And you've got a shit ton of trim, but less trim. The pattern called for 35 yards. I said no. Well, what I ended up doing was using decorative stitching instead to sort of fill in, because 35 yards of trim at like $10 a yard, that is $350 worth of trim. And that is just for the trim.
$315 with your discount.
Yeah, it's wonderful. But, that is just a shit ton of trim. And again, these still very much conspicuous consumption. How much can I afford to show off? But yeah, that project took me a very long time. And I'm incredibly proud of how it turned out. And if any of our listeners or viewers want to take a look at it, I do have taken by, with a tripod. I'm going to get a proper photo shoot done soon. But I do have pictures up on my Instagram, Samwise_cosplay. Samwise, like in Lord of the Rings.
It's in the chat. So.
Okay, great.
Yep.
And so I do have some pictures up of that. But my next project, I have been sort of going on a trend of doing more historically accurate Disney villains. I did a semi-historically accurate Frollo, and that was, I don't know how that ended up so incredibly long. Like, I wore it, and admittedly I was 100 pounds heavier at the time, so I did need more belly, but like The amount of extra length on that was... I tried to put it on because I was thinking, I can just wear this for one of the Halloween events I'm going to. No, this is like a foot too long. I don't know how this happened. But so I did historical Frollo, I did historical Captain Hook. I'm sort of looking at Ernesto de la Cruz next, from Coco, and doing, a very accurate, and that wouldn't be historical, that would be more contemporary, but, de la Cruz, I think, was supposed to be in the 1960s or 70s.
No, I think it was a little older than that.
No?
40s, 50s maybe.
Okay, yeah,
Especially
you're right. And so looking at, I've yet to do any of the research for this, but looking into how Charo suits, the mariachi suit, it's called a Charo suit, and I can't roll my R's, otherwise I would pronounce it properly.
And you're from New Mexico.
I tried to be an opera singer. Yeah, I can gargle my R's like the Jew I am, but looking into maybe, I imagine there has been development in the Charo suit and how that has changed over time. And, maybe trying to do something interesting with that, but doing a very, very world-realistic Charo suit. And, of course, the other thing, I'm a singer. I can sing all of that mariachi music. I love all of that music. So that actually brings me into another really interesting thing about cosplay that I always mention to people. The costume contests that I've won, sometimes they've been for the costume, but every time they have been for the performance. They have always been... My first really successful cosplay was as Richard Nixon's head in a jar from Futurama. And,
that was a good one.
And part of that is it's impressive because the makeup is very detailed. It's a cosplay that, up until then, you would have thought it is impossible to cosplay this character. Essentially what I did was I built a cabinet and styled it like a speaking podium, and my head was coming out the top.
Jeremiah saw this one, didn't you? Like,
I've
live.
seen it.
Yeah, and my head was coming out the top, and it's gone through various iterations that are progressively less harmful to myself to wear. Like I added ventilation and wheels. But the thing that really wins the costume contest is the fact that I can do a really good impression. And that was the last time I wore that was at Indie PopCon, and I got to meet Billy West, and he looked so delighted. I did one of the monologues from the show, and he just looked so genuinely delighted. That was a wonderful moment for me. Mr. West is such a nice guy. The one where I really realized that was I did Professor Oberon from the newer Jumanji movie, Jack Black's character, where he's a teenage girl with her
stuck in
Jack Black's body, and I entered the costume contest on a lark. I was bored. It was I was not expecting to win. This was this was not a detailed or impressive or big costume. I got second place, and I was like, wait a minute, why am I? Oh, it was the performance. And from then on, I have realized every single costume that I'm putting into competition needs to be a performance. So I'm planning to do, with Captain Hook, do some sword fighting, do some monologues from that, do some performance with that. With the NCR Ranger, I do some pistol twirling. With doing something like Mrs. Doubtfire, for example, which is a definitely plan to do that at some point. Need to get off my ass and finally do that.
Sounds like you figured out your next project.
You need to do the meringue version one, I think.
No, hell no. I want the makeup challenge. I want the challenge of the makeup. But and so I would of course do the whole performance as Mrs. Doubtfire. The Grinch, Jim Carrey's Grinch, is another one that I want to do. Because it's this wonderful big character that you can really perform in. I'm actually teaching myself to juggle swords so that I can do a Gomez Addams costume, because I've got a Gomez Addams costume, because Gomez is my role model. He is everything I aspire to be. But that costume is not terribly impressive. It's a smoking jacket. It's a smoking jacket and suit pants. What would
slick the hair back really well?
Yeah, slick the hair back, trim the mustache, and it's
at the most you've got a 1930s pinstripe. If you
go
that far,
but again, ultimately, that's just a zoot suit. Well, kind of a zoot suit, but it's just a suit.
Yeah,
that's not a very impressive costume. That's not a very interesting costume. Juggle swords in it, and you're getting somewhere.
add the cigar and the accent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Listen for French.
French.
Anytime Morticia would speak
Oh,
French.
yes. Sorry, I thought you meant the accent was French. I was like,
Oh.
buddy, what rock have you been living under?
Obviously not the right one.
Yeah. Do you guys have any water I could get? I don't want your sloppy seconds.
No. Do we have any... speaking of it, is the hour mark, according to our person back there. We probably have a cup in the other room.
That would be lovely, yeah.
Here, Jeremiah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there was a place next door, like a...
Oh, they're closed.
Unfortunately, the
Jeremiah,
next door closes at
Run
9.
downstairs, ice, water. Yeah.
I need food.
Yeah, it's civilian would be a great place to go, but unfortunately, would they close in how many minutes?
They closed an hour ago.
They closed an hour ago.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah, we shut our kitchen down at 9.
Yeah.
Oh. But, anyway, so yeah, back to what I was saying. Performance can really elevate a costume. I think one of the most phenomenal and well-deserved costume contest wins I've seen was Seymour from Little Shop of Horrors. And she was a girl doing this, but she had this wonderful puppet of Audrey 2, and she was doing ventriloquism with the puppet.
Oh, nice.
And that was wonderful. And she very was that... I think that was Peachy Sweet's cosplay. She's based in Boulder, I think. She's out in Colorado. I know her from the New Mexico con circuit.
Okay.
Or Peachy cosplay, something like that. I just know her as Peach. But, yeah, she did a wonderful Seymour costume, and I believe she won Best Performance for that. And I think that should be a category in all costume contests. Another one that I won was I did... Again, from that book series nobody's ever heard of, the Honorverse, I did Chaplain Olds, who is a insomniac reverend aboard a spaceship. He's the ship's preacher. It's a very religious society that this ship is, and so he is the preacher on board. And he has a hyperactive imagination and insomnia, so he is constantly has the biggest bags under his eyes, and is jittery and terrified because everything on a spaceship can and will kill you.
That's justified. Yeah.
And so he that was another one that I had. I wrote this monologue of, Tester, please don't let the building catch fire, trapping us all in and roasting us alive. Things like that, which, was just a ton of fun.
We have water.
Ah, lovely, thank you.
So, again, we are at the 1 hour mark. Do you wish to keep going? What do you want to do?
Absolutely. Let's have a conversation.
Awesome. What, Jeremiah? Just have that look again. Okay. Face.
How dare you have this face? Revolting.
So, with the cons coming back alive, what's the next con you're going to go to?
I'm not sure. Money is tight. Money is always tight. I'm a college student who cosplays. Money's tight.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. I'd love to find myself at one of the bigger ones, especially like, say, Holiday Matsuri down in Florida. Some of my favorite cosplayers go there. Anime Weekend Atlanta just wrapped up. I would have loved to have gone to that. Probably I'm going to stick to the local stuff for now, something I don't need to get a plane ticket and a hotel for. So I know there's something coming up in February. But I'm not entirely sure.
What's coming up in February? Take a look. The only one I can think of is we have the Comic-Con. What's the one that happens in Bloomington?
Oh, that's the Indiana Toy Comic Expo.
Toy Con. Yeah, that's April, isn't it? I don't remember.
May, I believe.
Oh no, Toy Con. Yeah, that's a different one.
Yeah.
It's another. There's one in March they're doing also from the Toy and Comic Expo people up in Indianapolis. There's 2 or 3 that are going on there's 2 that are going just from that group of people. I can't remember any.
And then of course
the
there's
others.
Gen Con.
Yeah.
And then Gen Con.
Well, speaking of cons coming back alive, I saw one of the cosplayers I follow on TikTok. She posted a understandably angry video talking about masking at conventions. And COVID is still among us, sadly. We are all vaccinated in this space. I was actually just tested recently, so I feel safe doing this in a small group. I am still masked up at work. I'm still masked up at school. I'm generally masking, but she was very upset because this convention was a masks required convention. I believe it was in Rhode Island, and she was with the 501st there, and they were saying, if somebody wanted to take a picture with them, please wear your mask, and it was not being enforced at all. And they ended up actually leaving the convention because the police came and told them you cannot ask people to put their masks on. So at a convention where it was everywhere plastered, it is required. You must wear a mask at all times. Vendors, guests, everybody has to wear one. And so she was understandably upset. And I think it's an interesting conversation to be had of how do we come back from COVID while there are still COVIDiots around, you refusing to get vaccinated and refusing to wear a mask and putting people at risk. Because, a lot of people in the convention community, we are a magnet to freaks, geeks, and weirdos. And so there are quite a number of people I know who are immunocompromised, who are part of that community, and who are not able to be vaccinated medically, and who you could kill, who would die if they got COVID. Yeah. And so they are understandably very concerned about going back to conventions, even though it is something they absolutely love. And I'd love to have a conversation about, how do we navigate that?
I think it depends on the crowd and the convention. I went to a convention in August, and my son, who is extremely paranoid about all this, said that's the first time he felt comfortable because everybody was following the mask mandate.
Yeah.
There was the few times you saw somebody without a mask, they either weren't part of that convention or they basically needed to be able to get their voice out because they were up on the stage 20 feet away from everybody.
Yeah.
And yeah, they absolutely loved it.
Well, one place that I actually think is doing a remarkably good job with masks and mask policies is Disney World. Disney World, Florida never had a shutdown mandate for theme parks. I'm also very interested in the theme park industry. I think it's really... I view theme parks as essentially large interactive stages.
I had a friend who worked at a Disney World. I should let you two talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd love to work for Disney's costume department down there. That would be... I did a backstage tour there at one point, and in the costume department, I was just salivating over everything. But anyway, Disney has done a really good job of, opening back up. They closed of their own volition, and they reopened of their own volition, I believe in, I want to say it was January of this year? Either late last year or early this year, because I went in February of this year, and mask policies were very well, adhered to and enforced, and social distancing was maintained as best they could. But I think, conventions are already... Disney has ultimate control over everything that happens there. Conventions are inherently chaotic spaces.
Yeah.
And, luckily we've gotten past the era of glomping and yaoi paddles and the fucking homestuck kids chucking buckets at you for no discernible reason. I still don't understand anything about that fandom, and they scare me. But we've gotten.
We all agree on that.
We've
don't
gotten
understand anything about it.
We've gotten past a lot of that stuff that was in the early days of conventions, but they are still inherently spaces of chaos. And
I heard mixed reviews on Gen Con as far as nobody enforcing anything.
Yeah, I've heard bad things about sexual assault at Gen Con. I've heard that they do not have the best record of dealing with that. Which is, especially since, at conventions, it's very hard to tell if somebody is a minor or not. And, that is something that we as a community of cosplayers, we need to all, it is on every single one of us to keep the kids in our midst safe. And to keep even if it's not a kid. You see somebody, I know this is probably not what, con security would probably not agree with me on this, but... You see somebody groping, groping at somebody, get them the fuck away from that person. Absolutely. Play escort for, if there's a young lady who is being harassed, or, a young man, if there's a person who is being harassed, it is your responsibility to get involved. Because if you're a bystander, you're allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
You are allowing this sort of behavior to exist within this community, and this is this is such a special and strange community that is so welcoming to the weirdest people. People who, cannot find community anywhere else. Who, I mean, this started as people who are just the absolute outcasts of society, comic book nerds. Finding a community and building a community for themselves. And as our community has grown, and you get any group of people big enough, you're going to get some assholes in there. But it is on all of us to make this community welcoming and inclusive and safe. And I think it's everybody is responsible, and it is everybody's failure when people are pushed out of it because it's not a safe community.
Something similar has kind of happened in the local, well, I say local, LARPing community. There's several groups, but this one in particular, Dagger here, the people who are in charge kind of said they don't care what happens as far as that is. It's on you if any sort of harassment occurs. Belagarth, which is the considered the bastard child of Dag, it's basically two people who split up, decided they were going to take the same rules and modify them a little bit and have this game somewhere else. As a collective community, both sides get along well. It's only the political figures that seem to have a real issue. But
that's why I'm not in the SCA, because a lot of the same stuff happens there.
Belagarth actually did come out and say, no, we're going to put our foot down. This is unacceptable. You treat everybody the same. We want everybody to be here. And so they've kind of stepped up better, more than what Dagger here has done.
Yeah.
There's another group called Ampguard, which they almost got in some serious trouble, from what I understand, several years ago. Put the brakes on it real quick because they're a lot more organized, a lot more stringent. There's a few things I don't like about them, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
When your rule book is, 300 pages for something that's supposed to be a simple game. Yeah.
That definitely comes up a lot too. Like I said, some of my best friends in the world.
At least Warhammer, you can have the book in your hand. Sorry.
True. Some of my best friends in the world, and people who are like second parents to me. They were involved with the SCA back when it first was starting up, and they tell these glorious stories of back in the day we used to have this insane. God, some of the stories they tell are just I don't want to even try to tell them because I will get them wrong, and Bill will be angry with me. Because somehow he will find this, and he will know.
When I send you the link, forward it to him. That's how we'll find out.
Yeah, fair enough. But he and his wife, they left the SCA because the politics made the game not fun, and it is ultimately a game. And unfortunately, some of that is starting to happen in the RMN as well, which I hate to see. I love the RMN. I love the community. Manticon it's just phenomenal. It's a great community, and I hate to be seeing people being pushed out because of politics, and a lot of people who... There was one particular figure, I am not going to get into any of the hot gossip. Oh boy, I could tell stories. But he was excommunicated from the group because he could not separate his rank of, I'm an admiral. I am so important. I am the most important person. You are a fake admiral in a fake space navy. You work at a law firm. Actually, no, you I think it was a paralegal. I don't even know. It's like, you're not even a real lawyer. Get your head out of your ass. It's a game.
Yeah.
And that I think comes down to a lot of the stuff that frustrates me in a lot of these, whether it's reenacting, whether it's LARPing, whether it's cosplaying. It is fun. The point is, life sucks. We have 9-to-5 jobs if we're lucky, or we work retail, or we have, responsibilities and bills and kids and stuff that we need to do. And the point of this is to have fun. The point of all of this is just to have fun and to get away from the real world.
Yeah.
And so often people get so involved in how do we, the politics and, oh, I'm in charge, but you're not having fun, and nobody around you's having fun, so why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Like, you get costume Nazis, these people who will nitpick a costume to death because, oh, it's not screen accurate. Are you having fun doing this? Is the person you're nitpicking having fun? What do you think the goal is here? Because the goal is not to be completely screen accurate. If you want to be completely screen accurate, if that is fun for you, if you want to join a group like the 501st,
yeah, I was going to mention them.
Or if you want to, the point of the 501st is to be completely screen accurate.
Mm-hmm.
That is their thing.
And the bonus for that is they've actually been used on call.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're in the movies.
That massive bragging rights, but that's fun for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody's not a member of the 501st, or you are not trying to be screen accurate, if you want to do, anime schoolgirl Yoda, or whatever the hell you want to do, are you having fun? Great, you win.
Yeah.
That is something I learned from Bill, my very good friend. He always says, "Are you having fun?" If the answer is yes, you win.
Yeah. And I've seen that with LARPing groups. They seem to get superiority. SCA is better than AMCARD. AMCARD's better than DAG. DAG's better than AMCARD. And it's just circle continues and continues. The historical society is the one to go to. Then you have people who are out there with steel blades, and they won't allow you in the group if any of your fabric ever touched a machine.
Or the HEMA people.
Yeah,
who don't care about the outfits and just care about the beating the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
Oh, and then you get people like the reign of the biker kings.
Oh God.
Are you familiar with all of
Yes.
that? Bill and Doreen were there for some of that. Okay. Which for those who are listening and don't know about the reign of the biker kings, the biker kings were there was a whole series of events where this whole gang of bikers realized that a legal way to get drunk and beat the shit out of each other was doing SCA. And so you got these guys who would gain kingship and become the king by just being the most brutal motherfucker around. And I think people's houses got set on fire, if I remember correctly. There was some bad shit.
I know a car got almost riot level on a few things.
I know a car got flipped over and set on fire. Yeah. I think there was a house set on fire. I know there was a car set on fire. Yeah. I think there was also an attempted assassination. They tried to burn this guy's house down with him in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was not a good time.
No, not a good time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And that is the opposite end of yes, you do need to have some rules and some structure to it, because otherwise you end up with the biker kings. But, you don't want to end up with politics and 300-page manuals and, because that's not fun either. You need to find the median.
Yep. And maybe if it's fun for somebody else, fine, let them have it. Move on. Find something else. Shake your head, Jeremiah. That's right.
I'm good at that.
Right. You agree with us.
Yes.
Louder. Mike didn't pick you up.
Louder. I couldn't. Yes.
There you go.
Okay.
Not even paying attention to your cues, or your R's or your S's. Yeah. So what else do you do besides costuming, theater, cosplay stuff?
I am a trained opera singer.
Mm-hmm.
I am auditioning for Broadway roles because I want to become a college dropout.
Mm-hmm.
I am in the process of writing an urban fantasy novel. What don't I do?
You do film?
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. I would not call myself a film person. I've really been getting down the rabbit hole of media criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Of analyzing everything about movies, TV, whatever you want to. So I love media criticism. I love history. I have a particular fascination with the history of lighter-than-air craft, Zeppelins in particular. I can talk briefly about it, or I can talk for the next 5 hours about it.
Well, let's go brief.
I love Zeppelins. I just think they're, and that was very much born from my passion for steampunk. And I got into this in high school. I have flown on the Zeppelin NT in Friedrichshafen, Germany.
Nice.
I just love them. I think that I very firmly believe if I ever get rich and famous, screw the billionaire space race, I would be trying to reintroduce airships to the modern economy, because I do believe
that note, there are a couple of organizations trying to do that, to make these luxury liners so that you can basically have
a cruise ship.
Yeah.
No, that is.
But
I am very familiar with.
instead
with
of being
a
at
lot
the
these.
bottom of the ship, the deck is on top. That's one of the many designs. They have the ones
That
with
is
the decks on the
that is a
sides.
terrible design. Thank you very much.
Well, because what are you going to see? Oh, the sky's still blue. Yay.
Well, no, you'd want to be on the bottom of the ship.
Well, I don't know why that's one of the designs.
Well,
but
also, not to mention, you want your center. You are dealing with lighter than air gases. Your center of gravity has to be the lowest point.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, your center of gravity will become the lowest point. And so,
I'd love to see that.
yeah, no, it would not end well.
Well, you'd have to talk to those engineers, those people who are trying to start that up. Whether they actually get anywhere.
Well, I think the best company that exists at the moment is Eros. They are led by, I think his name is Igor Pasternak, if I remember correctly.
Name sounds familiar.
Russian guy, out of, I believe he was from former Soviet Union bloc state. They are based in California. They are doing some phenomenal work. And they are, I think, probably the best company building airships right now. But there is constantly, over the last couple of decades, there is some project or some new company gets formed, and over and over and over again there is a hope for a new revolutionary airship. But I think, I personally believe that airships could fill a couple of roles in a modern society. Luxury travel is definitely one of them. Flying cruise ships are absolutely, I think, a marketable and profitable idea. There's going to be a lot of initial investment, though, and that is the problem. A lot of initial investment into research and development, into building, into infrastructure, and, of course, into marketing, because it has been almost 100 years, and people still very vividly remember the Hindenburg.
Yeah. I think the problem is people are also too used to getting there faster. Everybody wants that instant gratification of getting there.
But cruise ships still exist.
Yeah.
And cruise ships are not fast.
No. Anything but.
Yeah, they are slow, they are leisurely.
But even from my understanding, even that sort of patronage is on the decline. So
it is, yeah. It definitely is.
And that's regardless of the pandemic. There's been too many, even before the pandemic hit, how many cruise ships in 17, 18, and 19 where you hear, well, this one's having to go to port because everybody on board is sick.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think, I wouldn't say it's a dying industry. I think it will be an industry for a very long time to come. There's actually a wonderful bit in the Honorverse, one of their series about, this is, again, 2,000 years in the future. They have interstellar space travel down pat. But there is one very funny and then very not funny scene that is set on somebody on a alien world in the year 4000 something or other has built a ship, a cruise ship on the water that is, and the most anachronistic thing ever. And there are these rich people, like, oh, we love the anachronism of it and the novelty of it. So there will always be a market for that, for actual ships, I think, because there's a romance and mystique about them. And of course, David Cameron did his best to make sure that cruise ships will always be around.
Well, we'll have to actually wait and see, because where history will go, we'll never know. Unless you live long enough. Nope.
Here's hoping we don't.
It is almost 10:30.
And I am starving.
Do you want to call it there then, so you can still try to find something to eat in the city bitty town?
Taco Bell's still kicking, I think.
I'm sure there's a McDonald's on the way home.
There is a
There
McDonald's on the way
On
home.
the way.
Matter of fact, that's the last thing you'll hit.
I think they close at 10.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah, it's Sunday.
Yeah, it's
I think
Sunday.
they close at 9 on Sundays because I can't go after work anymore.
Gross.
Yeah.
Denny's. There's a Denny's over on the... over.
There's no Denny's here. That's being Bloomington.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Oh well, I know. There's stuff in Bloomington, but I've also just if I'm gonna go that far, I'll just be home.
Yeah. Well, there's Babs. There's a grocery store.
Yeah, it's 24 hours.
Yes, absolutely. I'm gonna go to a
Been around for
grocery
93
store.
years.
Yeah. The deli's closed though, because that closes at 6. Why isn't the deli 24? Because I want my chicken right
Stop
now.
serving at 8 unless
I know,
they're
right?
short-handed.
Is the Wendy's?
Damn Midwest Hicks.
Wendy's closes
Wendy's-
early too.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say they closed early. I thought they were open till midnight.
Were.
Were magic
Yeah.
word, right? Were.
I went there the other day and they were closed at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
So that's enough about franchises.
Well,
Too bad none of the actual
let's
local
close
places
this down
aren't
then.
open.
Yeah.
Sponsor us.
Yeah, seriously, I'd love to.
Civilians should be open right now.
I always prefer to eat local.
Yeah.
Mostly because the food is usually much better.
We'll try to bring you into town some other time earlier so you can actually hit either Civilians, which is local, Jits Thai, which is local.
Oh, yeah.
If you come in real early and not on a Monday or Tuesday, you can also hit Main Street. It's a little coffee shop that's actually got some pretty good stuff.
It's
Who else I've been trying to get on this show, so if you are listening to this at all, call me.
Crossroads 46 is also at fairly good.
Don't
place.
waste your time.
They're okay.
I like Crossroads.
Yeah, don't.
Not good times. Don't.
No.
Never.
Oh,
good
definitely
time.
not good times.
I'm
It's
getting
anything
very
but.
mixed. I'm getting very mixed signals.
Chambers is okay if you go for the breakfast buffet.
Oh,
but
no,
don't stick
no,
for the lunch and dinner.
don't.
It's not
Don't.
good food.
Don't.
It's just.
No.
All right, so
good
somehow I
food.
don't think we need to be broadcasting this anymore.
All right. Well, Sam, thank you for coming out. We'll definitely do this again. We have more stuff coming up. If you have a play or anything else that you would really like to push,
Well,
come reach out to me.
I mean,
We'll do
one
that.
thing that I can plug here is Parsifal. Did that last year. Falstaff is going up at IU, the Musical Arts Center, put on by Jacob School of Music. The show dates are next weekend.
Okay.
So that is going to be a phenomenal opera. It is a very fun opera. It is an opera. It is long. It is not for everyone.
You said it's next weekend?
Yes.
Okay.
Come for the first act anyway. It's come for the first act, see the amazing costumes, see the wonderful sets, and then leave.
All right.
Opera's
I
not for
enjoy-
opera's
show.
not for everybody. I get that. Opera is not for everybody, but
So,
it is going to be a good time.
all right. Well, thanks, Jeremiah Manning. Ford, where were you today? You would have loved this
Wasn't
show.
on the chat.
I know.
I kept staring for an hour and a half and nothing.
Sam, thanks for keeping an eye on the YouTube stuff.
Not me, Sam. Him, Sam.
That's Sam, yes. I'm John. That's Sam. This is everybody else. Have a good night. Do you know which button to push?
All right, this is Colin. I won't be able to get in tonight.